from Week 9 going into Week 10. I'm Trey Seitz.
And I'm Rob Matter.
Here we go again.
What's my drug of choice?
All right, here we are with the Week 9 recap. First, we're going to be talking about my game with Supermom, the Seitz game matchup. I pulled it through with the victory 81-70. Kristen's top scorer was the Panthers defense with 20 points, who outscored Alfred Morris, my high scorer, with 18 points. It was a close game, but I knew my team could pull it out, and I knew we were still strong even without Adrian Peterson.
All right, the next game is my game, Steelers Wheel versus Three Sharks in the Water. Tell you what, Matt Forte, Eddie Lacy, Brandon Marshall, and Robbie Gold showed up last night, and Three Sharks pulled out the win, 128-119. His high scorer was Matt Forte with 23. Zach Stacy, it's been a recent pickup for me, put up 29, but it still wasn't enough to take out the undefeated Three Sharks.
Next game we're going to talk about is going to be Flea Flickers and Lucci's Winners. I'm sure John was talking about how he was going to pull out the W there, 72-77 going into Monday's night game. The final score was 73-77 with Aaron Rodgers reporting in with a whopping 1 point after a collarbone fracture. They're saying on ESPN that he's going to be out for up to 3 weeks. I think that's a little short for what I've seen before with other quarterbacks, but Aaron Rodgers is a bigger quarterback. He's a strong guy. I think he could possibly meet that timeline. We'll see what happens, but John's going to have to rely on Andrew Luck for the next few weeks. Top scorers were Rob Gronkowski with 20 points and Adrian Peterson with 23 points. He didn't get the W. He didn't.
All right, our last game then is Jay Knights and Victor's Wildcats. Jay Knights, after losing his first 7 games, is now on a 2-game winning streak. He won 96-69 with a top scorer of Giovanni Bernard with 21. Victor Wildcats, Deshaun Jackson put up another big game, 21, but again, wasn't enough.
All right, here's the standings for going into Week 10.
All right, guys, we've had some mix-up to the playoff seeds here after Week 9. Three Sharks obviously still on top at 9-0. Second seed is now Master Disaster at 4-5. Third seed is Flea Flickers, 5-4, taking advantage of Aaron Rodgers' injury. Lucci's Winners drops down to the 4th seed at 4-1. I am now down out of the winners bracket at 4-5. Steelers Wheel in 5th place. Victor's Wildcats also 4-5 in 6th place. Supermom 3-6 in 7th place, and Jay Knights is 2-6-1 is still in 8th place. Interesting thing to mention here is that in our playoffs right now, the 2nd seed through 7th seed are all within 2 games of each other. So with 4 games left in the season here, there's a lot that can change and a lot that can happen from here on out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting the way it's been riding with the top 3 teams from the West going to the playoffs. It's so close now. I mean, it could possibly change here in the next couple of games. We have 4 games coming up yet. If the losses fall in the right places, it could totally switch over to, the top 3 teams from the East. They're so close. I think Jay Knights might have a possibility if he goes on a winning streak here after I beat him this weekend. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting how it goes.
Yeah. Okay, guys, moving on to the mentionables. First, we're going to talk about Alfred Morris, who's on Master Disaster. He's facing Minnesota this week, who's 26th against fantasy running backs. Alfred Morris has been amazingly consistent this year. I tried to steal him from you at one point with a trade, but you wouldn't let him go. He's a 10th fantasy running back. He's not too flashy, but like I said, he's consistent.
Yeah, I like Alfred Morris. His downfall right now is the last 2 weeks, 6 touchdowns in total have gone to other players. 2 weeks ago against Denver, he lost 3 touchdowns to Roy Halou. He still had 1 touchdown that week, but he's still getting the yardage, the rushing yardage out of the games, even though he's losing the touchdowns. And then this past week against San Diego, he lost 3 touchdowns to Young, the fullback. I think it's a great scheme there that Shanahan is running. You never know who's going to be the one that gets the ball in the end zone. Personally, I would like to know who's going to get the ball in the end zone, and I would like it to be my guy, but that's the fantasy world. You take it as it is. But, like he said, they're playing Minnesota, ranked 26th against the running back. I don't know. I think he's got some good matchups here, but he's done bad other weeks against weak defenses against the rushers. So I don't know what exactly is going to happen this week, but what's your prediction?
I think he might have one of his biggest games of the year. I say good.
I think he's going to have a good game also. All right, next we're going to talk about T.Y. Hilton. He's playing against St. Louis this week. He's ranked 15th wide receiver overall. St. Louis is 18th against the wide receiver. T.Y. Hilton, he's shown himself to be a good wide receiver earlier in the season, getting some good numbers here and there. But now that Reggie Wayne is out, and right now Darius Haywood-Bay is dealing with some injuries, and that really showed the other night against Houston. Getting 7 receptions and 121 yards, 3 touchdowns for a total of 30 fantasy points. He had a phenomenal game that night. I think he'll continue to do good things here in Indianapolis, but now he is the number 1 wide receiver, and he's going to be getting that wide receiver 1 coverage.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just going to say is, like you said, he's the 15th fantasy wide receiver as far as points go. 30 points this past week really helped that out, I think. But he's been the only consistent wide receiver in Indianapolis, and I think it's only going to take 1 game for St. Louis to figure that out, and I think they're going to throw the double coverage on him. And he's a fast guy, but he's not big. He's not that Calvin Johnson that can go out above somebody else or Brandon Marshall and beat that double coverage. So what's your projection for this week?
My projection is still good.
I think he's going to get the double coverage, and it's not going to be good for him. All right, moving on. The next one to talk about, I said to you earlier when you said, hey, who are we going to talk about tonight? I said, we got to talk about Andre Johnson. Hasn't had a touchdown all year and then puts up 3 while sitting on 3 Sharks bench. I also said to you, I can't believe I lost to him, and he had his 40-point score on his bench yet, too. But anyway, moving on. He's facing Arizona this week, who is 6th against the pass. Other than his big game this past week, he's only had 2 other games above 11 points. Case Keenum, I think, gives him a better chance because he's more that gunslinger type of quarterback. What do you think is going to happen this week?
Well, I think it was interesting. I think he got lucky this week. He's kind of been a sleeper all year. He hasn't really been producing his Andre Johnson numbers. He's definitely considered in the NFL, not fantasy world right now, but in the NFL, he's considered one of the top wide receivers there are. He's right up there with the caliber of Dez Bryant and Calvin Johnson in my mind. He's a big guy. He's a fast guy. He's just right now, the quarterback situation isn't happening with him. He's still getting decent numbers, but he should be putting up more than what he is. like you said, he got 40 points. He got that, over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns on only 9 receptions. 9 receptions for over 200 yards. That's some good yardage that he was getting per catch.
It was almost all in the first half, too.
Yeah, I think he had 2 of the touchdowns in the first half, and he was at like 30 points going into halftime. But, I think we might start to see Andre Johnson now, like you said, with the new quarterback there. He's a gunslinger. Maybe they'll get back into the rush or the passing game more. And they need to do that to open it up more for Arian Foster as well, because he hasn't been having that top performance year that everyone's expecting him to always have. So what are your projections for this week?
I think since he showed up, I think St. Louis is going to start double teaming him because I don't know if they have enough other people there.
I'm going to say bad also. I think he's going to get the double and triple coverage. All right, next we're going to talk about Frank Gore versus Carolina. Right now he's the 7th overall running back. Carolina is 7th against the running back. Now, he has 1 game this entire season without double digits. It happened in week 2 against Seattle. He has 1 game above 20 points versus Tennessee. Basically with those numbers, you can just tell he's having a solid year. He may not be producing those 20-point games as much as John would like him to, but he's a consistent running back. He has been for years. He's getting a lot more work this year than he has been the last couple of years. They were trying to kind of throw in a couple of the other running backs, but this year they definitely stuck with him, and it's paying off immensely for him.
Yeah, I agree. He's been very, very consistent this year. He only has 1 game under 10 points. Granted, that was a 2, but I think he got hurt in that game also, and that's why he didn't do much. I think you mentioned Carolina 7th against fantasy running backs, and he's the 7th fantasy running back overall. So I think it's a good matchup. But like I said, with his consistency, hasn't really mattered who he's been up against. He's always going to get you double digits. So what do you think for this week?
I think this week is going to be his 2nd game of the season
really?
With less than double digits.
Okay, our next one to talk about is Cecil Shorts, Jacksonville wide receiver. They are playing Tennessee in Tennessee this week. They are 1st against fantasy wide receivers this year. Cecil Shorts, surprisingly to me, was ranked 31st, so he's in that top 32 wide receivers for the league. With no more Blackman there, and Henne is not necessarily a bad quarterback. He's not always consistent. He'll throw interceptions sometimes, but he's still going to throw the ball. Jacksonville usually has to catch up and try to win a game. So, what do you think?
I agree with you. With Blackman out now, a lot more targets are going to come his way, which is hard to say a lot more targets because he's really one of the top wide receivers right now in targets his way. In 7 games so far this season, he's had double-digit targets thrown towards him. And, I mean, that's phenomenal for a wide receiver, whether or not they're actually coming to him or they're just throwing the ball out of bounds and he's the closest wide receiver. Either way, that means that the quarterback is looking in his direction. Mm-hmm. And with the changing of quarterbacks that they've been going through, all the quarterbacks seem to be comfortable with Cecil Shorts overall out of every wide receiver they have. What are your projections this week?
I think he's going to do good.
I think he's going to do bad. Tennessee's been doing it pretty well. All right, next we're going to talk about Alshon Jeffrey on Steelers' wheel team. Right now he is the 11th wide receiver. He's going against Detroit this week, who is 29th versus the wide receiver right now. Something unique about this guy is they're kind of using him in the rushing attack as well. So far this season, he has a total of 89 rushing yards, which I find interesting because you don't expect to see that much out of that team, out of that offense.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of end arounds and bubble screens to him also. It's also interesting that he and Brandon Marshall look so similar. Watching those games, it's hard to tell who has the ball. One's 15, one's 17, so that's a really scary team right now. Like you said, they're going against Detroit, who's been pretty bad against the pass this year. They've had 2 weeks to prepare. They were on the bye last week, the Lions were. And so I think they're going to try and figure out how to stop their top threats, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, and I don't know if you have enough room left over to try and stop Alshon Jeffrey. So what do you think for this week?
For this week, I also wanted to put in there, this is a guy to play for the rest of the season. Going against Detroit this week, then Baltimore, St. Louis, then Minnesota. He's got a pretty nice schedule for the rest of the season. I think against Detroit, even though they have time to prepare, I'm going to say he has a good game. Like you said, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, they have too many weapons to try and double team everybody.
Right.
This is your guy to get open.
Okay, next is Jay Knight's Fred Jackson, who is playing Pittsburgh this week. Fred Jackson is the 8th overall fantasy running back, and Pittsburgh is 28th against the run. Fred Jackson's also been very consistent this year as well, and Pittsburgh's given up 5 touchdowns to running backs in the past 2 games. C.J. Spiller in or no, I don't know if that really matters.
Fred Jackson is really a surprise. A lot of people didn't want to pick him up last year for fantasy. I picked him up rather late in the draft, and he got hurt. So last year he didn't have a good year, but I wanted to stay away from him. I like the guy, but because of what he did to me last year, he's getting older. You can't really count on him to stay healthy anymore. But he's having a phenomenal year, in my opinion. I mean, being ranked 8th overall in the league, that's pretty good to say for a guy of his age on a team that has the stats right now that they do. He doesn't have a single game, though, this year with over 100 yards. And I find that surprising with the numbers that you see that he's gotten so far this season. As long as he can stay healthy, I give him a thumbs up for the rest of the year. I think he's going to do well as long as he can stay healthy with C.J. Spiller helping him out. That's going to help him to get less touches, but that means he's going to stay healthier in the long run. What are your projections for this week?
I say good. I think he's feeding off everybody saying he's too old and too hurt.
I agree. I love Fred Jackson. Just stay healthy, man. All right, and the last one we're going to talk about is Harry Douglas. They're going against Seattle this week. He's 15th overall in wide receivers. Seattle is 3rd against the wide receiver. With this guy playing with Roddy White out, Julio Jones is out, Steven Jackson's back, I think we might start seeing some wins out of them. They do kind of have a tough schedule coming up, but I think they're going to do pretty well, and I think he's going to do pretty well as the number 1 wide receiver down there.
I do think that they have some of those games to look forward to. They'll have that reckless abandon, throw caution to the wind type of style to their game. Maybe throw the ball a little bit more than they normally would. So I think it's going to bring them a lot of targets in the next few weeks. And Harry Douglas has had 20, 12, and 8 points in the last 3 games since Julio Jones been out. So I think he's going to get a lot of targets, but Seattle's just got a pretty good defense up there, with the Legion of Boom. So I don't know. What do you think for this week?
I think with Matt Ryan throwing to him, he's going to have a good week.
I think he's going to be bad. He's the only one other than Tony Gonzalez that's down there. So. Okay, guys, back to bold predictions. So I am 0-3 in this category here so far. I was so close again this past week. I had predicted Minnesota to beat Dallas, and they almost did. They almost pulled it out, but no such luck. You, on the other hand, you were really, really wrong this week.
Yes, I am 1-2 right now, which is significantly better than Rob's, I might add. This week I'm going with Atlanta over Seattle. They're playing in Atlanta. We just talked about Harry Douglas there in the mentionables. I think they have what they need to be successful now. Seattle's been really good at home. So they're not at home. They're traveling to the East Coast. They got that 4-hour time difference. I think with Jackson back, Matt Ryan, he's a good quarterback. He's just been losing weapons. But Harry Douglas stepping up, Tony Gonzalez still healthy. I think they're going to pull out the W this week.
That's a really good pick. I, on the other hand, am going to choose Tampa Bay to get their first win this week in the battle of the Florida teams. With Glennon there at quarterback, they showed last week against a really good Seattle team that they can play with the big boys. So I think against a weaker Miami team, they've got a good defense, but I still think Tampa Bay might go in and show up this week.
I was going to consider Miami for defense this week, but with everything that's going on with their defense right now, Incognito out for the season.
That's a weird one.
Hurt them. It could hurt them a lot, so I'm gonna stay away.
Yeah, there's certain situations, especially Tampa Bay like that, where they start playing well out of nowhere. Same thing with the Texans. You never know what you're going to get from one week to another.
Yep. All right, here we are with the Week 10 preview. This is the rematches from Week 3. First, we're going to talk about J-Knights and Master Disaster. Their matchup this week. Last time we met was 73-55. I was on my winning streak, and Michael Vick was my top scorer, and the Falcons were his top scorer. Neither of which are on either team anymore. So it'll be interesting to see who our new top scorers are with this matchup. And his 2-game winning streak is going to come to an end. But don't worry, he can possibly go to a 3-game winning streak after Week 10 going into Week 11.
Next game is my game, Steelers Wheel versus Lucci's Winners. The last time I won 110-64, riding on Antonio Brown's big 31-point performance. His top scorer that week was Wes Welker. See what Lucci can do this week without Aaron Rodgers.
Next game is going to be Flea Flickers and Three Sharks in the Water. Last time they ended with 122-68, and obviously with his 9-0 schedule, you can tell who won that. Top scorers is Drew Brees and LaShawn McCoy, both of which are still on their team, both of which are both still running very well, scoring very well. So we'll see what happens here. Maybe Flea Flickers can pull out the defeat on Three Sharks in the Water.
I hope not. Okay, and the last game to talk about here is Victor's Wildcats versus Supermom. Last time they played, Supermom pulled out the victory pretty handedly, 101-70. As we were looking at the Week 3 matchup, we noticed that number one, Victor's Wildcats bench almost outscored his starting roster. And then both he and Supermom's top scorer were both on their bench this week. So let's see if they can adjust their rosters. And don't ask me for advice because I haven't been very good at this lately. But adjust your rosters, get the right guys in there starting, and see what happens. All right, thanks for watching this week. We'll be back next week with the Week 10 recap and Week 11 preview. Until then, I'm Rob Mattern.
And I'm Trey Seitz.
Have a good week and good luck, guys.
Good luck. Go get them.
I don't think so. Thank you for watching. Would you like fries with that?
I'll take a number 5 with that. All right, here's the Week 10 standings going into Week 10. Okay, I'm going to do this. Deshaun Jackson, never mind, cut that.
I think there's a few little things I can probably edit out of there, but that'll be easy. Oh, my nose freaking itches tonight, dude.
I keep getting the itch right underneath my nose.
Oh.
All right, the screen down, then it's no good.
Here, hold on. You gotta see this one.
What am I seeing? Let me pull up Skype. Oh my gosh. So cute.
She got her.
Little footies. Come on, she's hot as hell right
Doesn't it look like that rabbit outfit
Yeah.
from, what is it? Christmas
Christmas
Story?
Story.
Here we go again.